Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to go over Game 3 between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then tee up Game 4, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of interesting adjustments that happen between Saturday night's game and the game on Monday night. And like we had mentioned in the previous video, with things shifting from Toronto to Tampa Bay being one of the better teams at home this season, the strategy was definitely going to shift with a John Cooper being able to control the matchups a little bit better, and also having Victor Hedman back in the lineup for Game 3. Now, when we talked about that in the previous video, we weren't sure what version of Victor Hedman we were going to be seeing. You know, is he going to be 70% healthy, 80% healthy, 90% healthy? No one really knew. The Maple Leafs got off to a bit of a flying start in this game where they scored to make it 1-0 and then 2-1. And then after they scored that goal to make it 2-1, they went into a bit of a lull where they were basically just circling back into their own zone with the puck, skating it over their own blue line, and then they couldn't really establish a forecheck in this game. When they would get it into the Tampa Bay zone, there was somebody there to cut them off, disrupt the play. They couldn't get anything going in the Tampa zone. And that was clear just by watching the game, but especially when looking at the scoring opportunities afterwards. The Lightning controlled the vast majority of them through pretty much every single period of play. And I mean, credit to them. Once this game was 2-1 Toronto, they established their style of play and they made the Leafs adapt basically all game long. And John Cooper was able to do that by hiding Victor Hedman in the weeds and finding the best possible matchups for him all throughout this game. When Victor Hedman was on the ice, the Tampa Bay Lightning controlled the vast majority of the shot attempts, 36-15. The actual shots, 14-10. They were up on goals, 2-1. They controlled the expected goals by over 70% and the scoring opportunities, 21-10, with the majority of his shifts just playing in the D zone, but like I said, up against the right matchups. He played the majority of his ice time up against the Matthew Knies, Ryan O'Reilly, and Nola Chari line, which kind of struggled in this game. They scored the opener for Toronto, but kind of struggled afterwards, and that's why they were sort of split up as the game went on. But it was Mikhail Sergachev playing the majority of the minutes up against Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. And curious enough, Victor Hedman wasn't on the ice in the final minute of that game when Ryan O'Reilly ended up tying it up. It's really interesting to see the way that the Lightning deployed him in that Game 3, because it says a lot about where he is in terms of his health right now, but also where he's going to be for the rest of the series. And we also got confirmation on Sunday that Erik Cernak will be ruled out for Game 4, but he's not been ruled out for the rest of the series. It's just another opportunity that the Maple Leafs need to take advantage of. Because in looking back to last year's series, Victor Hedman and Erik Cernak were the Tampa Bay Lightning shutdown pair. They played over 60% of their minutes up against Austin Matthews, and they controlled the actual goals 4-3, and the rest of the micro stats were pretty even. They neutralized the top scoring threat for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just to be real short and sweet about the Morgan Rielly and Brayden Point situation in the third period, I know some people are going to feel one way about it, and a lot of other people are going to feel another way about it, but in my opinion, you have two guys battling for the puck, and Brayden Point takes a route to that puck that puts himself in a bit of a vulnerable spot, and Morgan Rielly, he's got two options here. Ride Point into the boards and try to win the puck, or let Brayden Point have it. And in a playoff game when you're down by a goal, he's certainly not going to let him have the puck. So I don't really know what most people wanted Morgan Rielly to do on this play. He doesn't extend his arms through Point. If you watch the play, unfortunately, I can't show it to you here in the video. He doesn't extend his arms through. If he really wanted to hurt him, I'm sure he could have broken his neck on the play, because that's how vulnerable Point was. But it's a puck battle. And sometimes, you know, we have a blanket term to describe plays like this. It's a hockey play. Sometimes just stuff happens, right? It's a fast and physical game, and I think that's what this is, and I think that the refs got it right in this sense. But again, I completely understand if you feel a different way, but at the same time, you know, even going back to the disallowed goal that Brayden Point poked in earlier on in the game, it's unfortunate, right? We saw a similar goal happen the very next day on Sunday in the game between the Boston Bruins and the Florida Panthers. And I believe that they gave a pretty sound logical explanation on the TNT broadcast as to why one goal stood and why the other goal didn't. And it had a lot to do with the positioning of the referees on both plays, where if you watch the Boston and Florida goal, the referee was riding close to the net and had a better view at things. But if you're watching the goal that Braden Point poked in, the referee was standing more towards the corner, couldn't see the puck, lost sight of it, and it's literally a rule, right? If the referee loses sight of the puck at any time, they're supposed to blow it dead. So they blew it dead. It was a quick whistle. It's no goal. And really, if we're looking at those two plays in a vacuum here, I don't feel bad. It doesn't take anything away from the win because there are so many of those 50-50 coin flip calls, those controversial calls that have gone against Leaf fans in the past or against the Maple Leafs specifically, that it's nice to finally be on the other end of it. The pick play on Justin Holl in Game 7, the two sort of phantom high stick calls in Game 6 that led to Tampa tying that game and then winning it in overtime. I don't feel bad. And then, like we had pointed out earlier, the Leafs got dominated in that overtime period where the scoring opportunities were 15-3 in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But Ilya Samsonov, ever since he let in the goal to make it 3-2, the Darren Radish goal, he really locked things down. And it wasn't pretty. There were a lot of scrambles and a lot of second efforts to try to even find where pucks were. But he kept them in this game long enough to get it to a point where Ryan O'Reilly could tie it with a minute left, and then Morgan Rielly could win it with less than a minute left in overtime, I believe. Through this stretch of the Leafs losing in the first round, it's very seldom that they've had the better goalie in any of those games that they've played. But Ilya Samsonov so far in this series has been better than AndreVasilevskiy in 2 out of the 3 games so far. And I don't think that's anything anyone expected him to do. I don't think that he needs to be better than AndreVasilevskiy for the Maple Leafs to win this playoff series. But it's really nice to not have the second best goalie on the ice all the time in the playoffs. If you want to go back to a performance where the goaltender won the game for the Leafs in the playoffs, maybe Game 6 against Boston in 2013 when James Reimer absolutely stood on his head. I know Freddie Anderson might have had a couple of games here and there where he was just as good, if not a little bit better than Tuukka Rask in those series against the Bruins, but there were some real ugly moments between those. And speaking of AndreVasilevskiy, so far in 10 career playoff games against the Toronto Maple Leafs, he has a save percentage of .874, and it has gone down as we've moved throughout this playoff series. I don't want to poke the bear too much here, but at the same time, the Leafs need to take advantage of this while they can. If he turns into the AndreVasilevskiy that we saw from Game 7 last year, they may be in trouble. But at the same time, he's only allowed less than 3 goals in 1 out of the 10 starts, which is insane. I could sit here and rattle off crazy AndreVasilevskiy stats in the playoffs for an entire 10-minute video. The fact that the Leafs have some kind of book or effect, or I don't even know what to call it, over him is crazy, but I'll take it. And then Sheldon Keith after the game had this great quote about the Tampa Bay Lightning using that Braden Point and Morgan Rielly situation as a classic example of a veteran team manipulating the officials and taking advantage of the situation. And what did he mean by this? He meant that there were 15 minutes left in a game where Tampa Bay was up 1 in the third period, and there was already a bit of a scrum going on, and Steven Stamkos is looking around and sees Austin Matthews standing next to him, and Stamkos is like, yeah, I'm a really good player on the Tampa Bay Lightning, but probably not a guy that John Cooper is going to turn to really lock this game down. Not really known for being a defensive first player. Why don't I take the other team's best offensive player off the ice with me for a large portion of time? And because there wasn't a whistle for a very long time in this game, Austin Matthews, Ryan O'Reilly, and another one of the Maple Leafs, and Morgan Rielly ended up being off the ice for almost 9 of the final 15 minutes of that game. So what they were trying to accomplish completely worked. But the fact that Stamkos didn't get an instigator penalty there when Matthews was trying to just basically pick up all the sticks that were on the ice, he wasn't trying to be part of that fight whatsoever. If you're not going to give Stamkos an instigator penalty there, I don't know when you would ever call an instigator. We talked about earlier on in the video Victor Hedman not being on the ice in the final minute when that game-tying goal went in from Ryan O'Reilly, but somebody who was on the ice for that tying goal was Matthew Knies, and it was really cool to see Sheldon Keith kind of put his lines in a blender in that third period to sort of generate something, because again, the Maple Leafs were having a very hard time basically all game long establishing a forecheck. Matthew Knies found himself going on a line from Ryan O'Reilly and Nola Chari to John Tavares and William Nylander to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. And he was out on the ice when the Maple Leafs had the net pulled, the 6-on-5 late in the game. It's really cool to see him develop, to see him just be good enough to be in this playoff lineup just 5 games into his NHL career at this point. And it sort of shows you why the Maple Leafs went through all of the hoops that they did to get this guy signed and then into the lineup the last week or so of the regular season with having to start all of the ATO goalies and whatnot. But just 5 games into his career, he's finding himself playing more 5-on-5 minutes than Calle Yarncroke, David Kampf, Alex Kerfoot, Sam Lafferty, and Zach Aston Reese. And the minutes aren't just being handed to him, he's earning it shift after shift. He looks awesome out there. This is another really cool stat that I wanted to share here, but Luke Schenn in the playoffs at 5-on-5 since his first year in Tampa Bay in 22 games, so going back to like the 2020 bubble playoffs, he has the lowest goals against per minute among the 293 skaters with as much ice time as him over that time frame. You know, a lot of people judged the Maple Leafs bringing him back into the fold here, you know, after he was drafted 5th overall by the organization. There's obviously a lot of history there, but the Maple Leafs didn't just do this because of nostalgia. This is a player that is a contributor come playoff time, and I've loved every single second that he's been on the ice so far for them. You know, there was that exchange between Pat Maroon and Brandon Hagel and Luke Schenn at the end of the benches, and Luke Schenn is just standing there absolutely absorbing every single chirp and every single word that those guys have to say, and he's unfazed by it because he knows that he could beat the crap out of both of those guys. He did it to Pat Maroon just about a week and a half or two ago, and those are, well, maybe not Brandon Hagel, but those are two guys, or that's Pat Maroon. He's a friend of his. You know, he won 2 Stanley Cups with him. He's amazing, and I've loved him on the ice every single second that he's played. He's not the same as Zach Bogosian. He's not the same as Ilya Lyubushkin. I still am a little bit worried when he has the puck on his stick in his own zone because that's not his game. That's not his forte, but at the same time, I'm less worried. He's not that same type of player. I have a little bit more faith in him, and he's been awesome. The point leaders have obviously changed because there was an entire set of game 4s played yesterday, but through 3 games in the playoffs, Mitch Marner leads the entire NHL in scoring. Morgan Rielly's got 5 points in 3 games. Ryan O'Reilly has 5 points in 3 games. That guy is so good. And against all the odds of getting outshot and outchanced and outpossessed in that game, the Maple Leafs win a playoff game on the road that they had no business winning. And you can't tell me that that doesn't make you feel some type of way. You know, they haven't won very many of those playoff games in recent memory. You can't tell me that that doesn't make you feel some sort of way, that that doesn't make you believe even just a little bit more, despite what we've seen over the last 7 or 8 years or so. I understand there's been a bit more history than just the 3 games that we've seen so far in this series, and there's still a long way to go. You know, they need to win 2 out of the next 4 games. The Lightning need to win 3 out of the next 4 games. I like where they sit. Obviously, you know, they're up a game in the series, but I like where they're sitting heading into game 4. But in looking a little bit more ahead towards the game tonight, Sheldon Keith did say that he does have some game time decisions, but he's not going to reveal who those guys are. And honestly, as long as it's not anybody in their top six, anybody in their top four that's banged up too bad, or Ilya Samsonov, who has looked like he's battled in this series so far, especially on a couple of saves, um, the Maple Leafs have depth, and they have depth for this very reason. You know, if you got a guy on your bottom pair or in your bottom six playing at 60 or 70% of what he can usually give you when he's healthy, the next guy up should be better than that. And I have confidence that the next guy up for the Maple Leafs is better than that. There isn't an exact quote from earlier today, but it sort of sounded like Sheldon Keith was leaning towards splitting up Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews for game 4 tonight. And I can sort of understand why. You know, that top line of Calle Yarncroke, Austin Matthews, and Mitch Marner was really the only line that had anything consistently going for the Maple Leafs throughout that game on Saturday night. So if you're splitting up Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, your hope is that you can get two lines going and try to at least reestablish the game that you're trying to play. You know, Alex Kerfoot is on the second line with John Tavares and William Nylander because he's a little bit more defensively responsible. He'll allow John Tavares and William Nylander to be a little bit more freed up to play offense. At least that's ideally what he does there. But at the same time, if you can't get anything going offensively, you need to make a bit of a swap there. And in switching maybe Nylander and Marner, this is giving you another defensively responsible player on this line that is also very, very good offensively. Maybe Kerfoot, he hasn't necessarily had that touch so far this year, and maybe that allows you to make a sort of different decision here with who plays on the left side of John Tavares, and that gets you a little bit more offense. It gets things trending in the right direction. We mentioned it in the previous video, but that pairing with Mark Giordano and Justin Holl has really struggled so far in this series. They've been on the ice for just 1 goal for and 4 goals against, and even more when you factor in their work on the penalty kill. But that's been better, at least since the first game of this series. But I don't know. I think you got to make a change. You got to switch something up there. And if one of the guys who are a game time decision come puck drop is Mark Giordano or Justin Holl, I would have faith that Timothy Liljegren could be better than one of those guys. You know, and if it's a forward, and it's more likely that it is, because there's more forwards than defensemen on the team, I wouldn't be surprised if they opted to go 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. You know, you get a bit of a different look on that third pair in giving Timothy Liljegren maybe some ice time, but you also shorten the bench up front, and you give yourself an opportunity to give guys like Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner, William Nylander, even Ryan O'Reilly, if he's going to be centering that third line, some more ice time, and maybe you can generate some more offense that way. But I don't know. You know, it's 3 o'clock as I'm filming this video right now. Obviously, we'll find out what the Maple Leafs lines are closer towards puck drop. Tonight is a 7:30 start time. It's not a 7 o'clock start time like the last 2 games have been. I guess we'll just have to see how it goes, right? But that's going to be it for the video. Make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, go Leafs go.